Today on the 01581, an update on the town from our town manager, Kristi Williams, and a conversation with our police chief, Todd Minardi, and our fire chief, Patrick Purcell. Join us. Hi, and welcome to today's episode of the 01581 Let's Talk. Thanks so much for tuning in. Welcomed by our regular guest, Kristi Williams, our town manager. Hi, Kristi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you.
Me too.
So what do you have for our viewers today, and what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's August 1st, but we're talking about fall town meeting. So just really preparing. We're starting to prepare for the October 16th, 2023 fall town meeting.
Okay.
So pulling together articles and typically, this is the town meeting where we might pay prior year's bills where the invoices hadn't come in time to be paid in the previous fiscal year.
And so just on that, folks
Sure.
would think, like, doesn't the town just pay its bills? And why do you need a town meeting? So if you could just tap
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, so you can't pay a bill from a previous fiscal year in a subsequent fiscal year without a town meeting vote.
Interesting.
So, town meeting, I
The
think
wheels of democracy turn slowly sometimes, yes.
So town meeting's seen these often.
Yeah.
Usually they're just small amounts, and once we get the vote, we can go ahead and pay the invoice.
Got it,
So,
okay,
yep.
all right. So paying the bills, that's good.
Yep.
Yep.
And then also it's a time where we might do a budget adjustment. So, the budget gets approved in March, and so something may have come up that causes us to need some sort of budget adjustment for the
Yeah.
current fiscal year.
And we've seen that in the past with some kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but as inflation has impacted services, sometimes expenses, we're looking for that budget adjustment. That would be an example.
Right. Yeah. Another thing, not upcoming yet on this town meeting, but union contracts, when we settle them, or
Right.
other employment contracts,
Right.
we do budget adjustments
Have
for
that
those.
adjustment. Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
And then sometimes it's in October we see things that are sort of more emergent or unforeseen.
Sure, sure.
It's equipment or things like that.
Right, or if we're applying for something, we've got to get, kind of a town meeting approval to apply for a grant or something,
Yep.
whatever it might be.
Yep.
Good, okay,
Yeah.
so that's October 16th,
Yeah.
and that is a Monday?
That's Monday.
Monday,
Yeah. So
okay.
that's per the current bylaw. So Monday at 7:00.
Yep.
I know that we talked at the last town meeting about potentially changing that, but that didn't move forward. So
Right,
that
right.
continues to be
Okay.
the third Monday in October,
Okay.
7:00. And then the board will close the warrant likely at the September 26th meeting.
Okay. And so just for our viewers some who may not be familiar with the process, so the articles are starting to go through a process of kind of being heard by various committees. So they've already gone through a process, maybe through a finance committee meeting, or certainly through your office, through the department heads, but then the finance committee the advisory finance committee will hear those, and then the select board hears them, and then other relevant boards may hear them as well. Is that correct?
Yep. So we've asked for initial articles to be into our office by August 10th, and so we'll start issuing drafts of the warrant, which we post on the website.
Right.
And then the finance committee will use those drafts to start inviting folks in, and so will the select board, so that you can start to hear those
Sure.
presentations.
Sure. Yeah. So for our viewers who are interested in, like, hey, I want to kind of understand how this works, this would be a good time to start to tune into those finance committee meetings and to the select board meetings, at least even just to follow the agendas, so you sort of understand, there's a town warrant discussion, that there'll be some discussion about what's upcoming. So, all right.
And we're planning to do sort of a special edition of our newsletter.
Great.
So send that out, just talking about town meeting, how to participate, where to
Sure.
go if you have questions, and then also just explaining what the warrant articles
Sure.
are. So.
Well, it sounds like at least in September we have a show already lined up where you can come back
That's right.
and talk about what's actually going to be on
Yeah,
the warrant.
yeah.
So good.
Perfect.
Well, and these town meetings, fall town meetings, tend to be a shorter town meeting than others, so we'll be happy to update you once we have more information. So, Kristi, thanks for being the guest today and to start us off.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. We'll be right back with Chief Purcell and Chief Minardi. Thank you. Hi, and welcome back. I'm so happy to be joined by our Police Chief Todd Minardi and Fire Chief, Patrick Purcell. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
for
so
having
much.
us.
So I asked our chiefs to join me today, and they've offered their time generously to talk about an important topic here. It's not unique to certainly Westboro, and we hear about it all the time, and that is the continued spread of drug use and overdoses and et cetera. And so in recognition of August 21st being National Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day, I asked our chiefs to be on just to kind of give some perspective to our viewers of kind of what's going on in our community, what are some of the ways in which we educate and try to help, and certainly then there's always the emergent aspect of the services that you provide. So so with that, I guess I'll turn to you, Chief Minardi, and kind of give us a lay of the land. What's out there? What do people need to be aware of?
Well, as we know, fentanyl's been a big problem for a number of years now. It really started back in 2014, 2015. The drug cartels in Mexico started realizing that rather than grow drugs, they can just make them. Obviously, it's more profitable for them. The Sinaloa cartel is one of the biggest players in Mexico that's driving the fentanyl drug trafficking throughout the United States. They're really getting the precursors to make the drug out of the People's Republic of China. So they're importing the chemicals, they're manufacturing the drugs in Mexico, and they're obviously pushing it across the border. One of the biggest problems is the counterfeit pills.
And what do you mean by that?
So rather than people that are out on the street might be looking to purchase, say, Oxycontins or Adderalls or Xanax,
Sure.
What they're actually purchasing is counterfeit pills made with fentanyl. And the drug trafficking organizations are producing those pills. They look identical to the real thing, but what the people on the street don't realize is what they're getting
Sure.
is actually fentanyl.
I had recently, during the Spring into Wellness event that was held up at Mill Pond in the spring, there was a display, and they were talking about that sort of the size of a pencil tip of some of this. I mean, in this case, it was like a powder, but is a lethal dose in some cases.
Yeah, the DEA says 2 milligrams, which is about the size of a tip of a pencil, can be fatal. And they're also reporting that I think it was 4 out of every 10 pills that they test actually has a lethal dose of fentanyl in it.
Wow. So, and sadly, that's here in Westboro, right? I mean,
Yes.
you guys are faced with this on a daily basis, both of your departments,
Absolutely.
respectively.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk a little bit about, maybe the education we're doing within our community, to the extent that you guys are aware that, and how we reach into the community to help to some extent with prevention, although that's a long-reaching topic.
So there are many different facets from which we do that. One is the Chief Minardi can speak about in a minute through his clinician that they have on duty. They interact with people with addiction issues quite frequently. There have been other departments, including the fire department, who provides EMS here in Westboro, as well as the public health department, that have worked to teach people how to use Narcan at home, the Narcan at Home program. I know the public health department does it regularly. We do it on occasion or upon request. Up until the COVID-19 pandemic, we were hosting drop-ins at the fire department. So we would have a variety of resources set up in our training room where people could come by and get information how to either access healthcare for themselves or rehabilitation for their loved ones.
Sure.
And we were told before we did this that typically on the first time you run a program like that, you would have 0 to 1 people come in seeking information, but don't be discouraged.
Sure.
And, just stick with it.
Yep.
And on our first one, we had more than 10.
Wow.
So here in town, and they weren't all residents of Westboro.
Sure.
But we have learned a lot from providing that program or these programs, which we're looking to start up again soon, that it's not specific to one area of the town, one race, one gender, one anything, that it's an illness that is not forgiving and can affect anyone at any time.
Sure, sure. And we have health systems that are already under tremendous crush and pressure. I know you've certainly come before the select board and talked about wait times for or wall time, for your staff. And so we have a healthcare system that is under tremendous pressure, and on the mental health side is not incredibly robust. It's getting better, and I think that we're all talking about it, and that's important. We should be, but real change has, in my opinion, has yet to happen. So, Chief Minardi, just going back to kind of, you started talking a little bit about kind of some of the changes you're seeing and kind of what's on the street, and so we're seeing that here in Westboro? Like, what do people need to be aware of? I mean, what form is it in? I don't know.
Well, so it's really heroin's kind of on its way out. Fentanyl is kind of replacing heroin.
Okay.
Years ago when I started on the police department, heroin wasn't really that prevalent in our area. It then became very popular because it was inexpensive.
Okay.
And so there's many different ways where people reach an addiction problem.
Yeah.
It could be through, a lot of times it starts with, being prescribed pain medication,
Sure.
and they ultimately end up getting addicted to it. And then when they can't get the pills anymore, they were kind of transitioning over to using heroin because it was readily available on the street. And now we're seeing that shift kind of go back to where they're purchasing the pills
Yeah.
that they think might be OxyContin or whatever it might be, but they're purchasing the fentanyl. So it's really replacing it's a synthetic opioid, so it's replacing the heroin is
Yep.
really what we're seeing today.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, kind of as we were talking before, there's a new drug on the street.
Xylazine
Yeah.
is becoming another problem.
That's an opioid as well?
It's not an opioid.
Oh, it's not? Okay.
Actually, it's another synthetic drug. It's a tranquilizer.
Oh.
It was not approved by the FDA for personal use. They actually use it on animals.
Okay.
And one of the issues with it is, like, Narcan doesn't work. So it's not an opioid. The Narcan works on opioid drugs.
sure.
So the xylazine is not going to get affected by the Narcan. But what we're seeing is, and it's not really that prevalent here in Westboro, although I talked to the fire chief and he said they have seen some cases of it.
Yeah.
They're using it as another cutting agent
Yeah,
for
okay.
the drugs.
Okay.
So they're mixing it. You could have xylazine and fentanyl and whatever other cutting agents they use.
Understood. Yeah. So we've talked a little bit here about Narcan. Folks may not know what it is, how it's administered, who can be trained. Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Narcan is readily available for pretty much anyone now. There are a lot of different capacities for which it's either carried or distributed or obtained. We could talk about the first responders here in Westboro. For a long time, the administration of Narcan was specific for paramedics only. And when we recognized the epidemic that we're in with opiate abuse and overdoses, they expanded the delivery of that to all first responders.
Okay.
So that's how it started slowly. In Westboro, we have a robust.
This is what our officers carry.
Okay.
We have a robust program where we expanded so police officers could administer that. Firefighters that were not paramedics, that were EMTs, they could deliver that. And so we share a medical director who provides us oversight and instruction and reporting requirements
Reporting, yeah.
for that Narcan. The way that it works is, so there's two different routes that are, well, there's many different, at least three different routes for administration. So what Chief Minardi just showed you was a nasal Narcan,
Okay.
and that is injected into a person's nose, and it is absorbed slowly through their nasal mucosa,
Okay.
which then they all at the end of the day work similarly. So they're designed to attack the opiate. It's like an opioid receptor
receptor.
antagonist.
Yep.
So it blocks the opiate that's in their system and allows them to breathe again. So paramedics can administer it either intranasally through the nose, IV,
Yep.
or intramuscularly.
Okay.
One of those three, and citizens can actually buy it now in like their local CVS.
Right.
The problem is if you're not trained how to use something the right way, sometimes you hesitate.
Sure.
So that really reaching out to the public health department, fire department, police department, someone,
Yeah.
and getting the instruction
Yeah.
how to do that is important.
Sure. And so, just so for individuals who feel like it's important that they are carrying it, maybe there's a member of their family they're aware is battling addiction. Does the public health department or the fire department offer that training to them?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yep,
I just
so
want to
we
be
do.
clear.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
The public health nurse that is assigned to the public health department, I think, provides that on a regular basis. Sometimes they establish programs through the library so people can attend.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of different approaches to the carrying of Narcan. So we see parents that want it without teenagers, because if their friends are over, they don't know who's there or what perhaps
Sure.
they could be experimenting with.
Yeah.
We have business, like local businesses with employees that have like regular customers that they have concerns about, that reach out and they want to be trained and carry that. So if a person has an incident in their business,
Yeah.
they can take action. So we're seeing a lot of different approaches where people aren't necessarily nervous to use it like they were at the beginning.
Sure.
It's been a pretty positive program.
So, and is it, I mean, obviously these are matters of life and death. I guess, so if a person is maybe, I mean, on the one hand, it'd be like, okay, I want to be a responsible member of my community and maybe I should be trained and I should be carrying it, but then I certainly wouldn't want to inappropriately administer something to someone that's going to, maybe they've had a heart attack and this is not what they need, but they're on the ground. So what advice would you give to sort of the general public on, is it call 911, you see someone in distress, call 911, as opposed to kind of trying to, I guess.
Well, so they should always send someone to call 911, because the dispatchers are all trained in emergency medical dispatch, and they can provide pre-arrival instructions.
Yep.
So if you're not sure, they're gonna walk down an algorithm and they're gonna provide pre-arrival instructions, and they will likely get to Narcan before we even arrive.
Got
But
it.
they'll provide instructions on airway support and
Okay.
CPR and
Yep.
bleeding control. But they'll get to the Narcan.
They'll get to that if it's appropriate.
Yes,
Yep.
but at the end of the day, if a person is unresponsive and
Yep.
you have Narcan, you're not going to do them a disservice by providing them Narcan.
Okay. Okay.
When in doubt, we give it to them.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you learn pretty quick whether or not that's the issue, because it
It-
works.
And I was going to say, and is the response, I mean, my experience is, sadly, in a good way, is limited to what I see on TV, which is just TV, right? So is the response pretty immediate?
Depends
If
on
it-
depends
it
on the
can be.
delivery.
It can be.
So
Okay.
the nasal Narcan, because it has to go through a different absorption route,
Sure.
is a little slower.
Yep.
The IM a little bit faster than
Yep.
than that, but the IV is usually
Is pretty
really
yep,
quick,
by the
within
nature of it.
within 10 seconds to
Yeah.
20
But
seconds.
Wow.
it's still really important that they get transported.
Of
because
course.
The
This-
Narcan can wear off and they could still overdose again.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously that person is in some sort of crisis to begin with.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Wow. What else? Any statistics that you are interested in sharing in terms of, I guess, call volume related to this?
So we actually, there's actually a county-wide website, critical incident management system, that is designed to track all the overdoses. And we do our reporting on that as well.
Okay.
So anytime we administer Narcan or anytime we go to an event where there's an overdose, the person's information gets uploaded into the website.
Okay.
I'm actually learning a lot more about it
Sure.
now than I
Yeah.
knew before.
Yeah.
In my new role. So definitely want to work with the fire chief and develop programs that we
Sure.
can move forward with to do follow-ups.
Sure.
But one of the interesting things about it is it's not only just what happens in Westboro. If an incident occurs in another community that's a Westboro resident, they get uploaded into the system so we can see that as well. So, you know, I have statistics back from 2019 where, you know, we had about 10, 12 incidents a year, excuse me. Statewide, what we see is 9 to 10 of the overdoses are, you know, it's 9 to 10 times more likely that it's not a fatal overdose. I think that's
Okay.
because of Narcan, because I know 2022 was a pretty big year. We had 21 total incidents. There were fatal, 4 fatal overdoses and 17 non-fatal overdoses. And we actually
Yeah.
administered Narcan 15 times. So,
Is there a potential for, and I think you just touched on it, like a feedback loop? So someone has an incident, they survive, they're now kind of in the system or identified. Do we have mechanisms within our community that sort of are, if the person is receptive to that, to kind of reach out for any sort of support? I'm thinking youth and family services, public health, or do we not have that kind of
well,
set up?
it's part of the, you know, the jail
is it a
diversion
state? Oh, okay,
clinician
okay.
that we have. Unfortunately, it's only a part-time position right now. We're waiting for the advocates to find us a full-time clinician, but
Yep.
that's part of the outreach program that
Okay.
they do. It's not just for mental health, it's also people with substance abuse issues, because a lot of time it's a co-occurring issue.
Sure, sure.
So that's definitely something that they focus on, but I think collaboratively, the fire department and the police department can work to build a more robust program.
Sure, sure. But some of that is happening through the clinical
Certainly, yeah.
program.
Yeah.
Steve, anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you said it perfectly.
Yeah, okay. So I do want to make the public aware that State Representative Kate Donahue has presented a couple of pieces of legislation that touch on this topic. One is the legislation that would require someone who is being discharged from treatment to leave with naloxone. So that is one piece of legislation that has been proposed. And then another one is to extend the mental health stay, which right now it's a 14-day, as I understand it, inpatient, but I'll have her on as a guest so she can talk about her own legislation. But this would extend it to 30 days. So that is certainly is proposed right now. But so I guess as we sort of wrap this up, what should people be aware of? How, you know, what's the awareness factor? I mean, of if someone suspects someone is having issues. I don't know, a couple pieces of advice here
So I'll throw out a couple
from the
things.
guys who see it all the time, the
I'll-
departments.
There's a couple different perspectives on that. So one thing is that when people have loved ones or themselves that have a problem, oftentimes they're reluctant to call public safety, particularly the police, for fear of getting in trouble. And that is not how we subscribe to doing our jobs. We want people to reach out to us so we can be part of a solution instead of a problem.
Sure.
So we would strongly encourage people to reach out to either department, and we will assure that they get what they need for services.
Yep.
If I can go backwards
Yeah,
a little
sure.
bit. Also, I think sometimes people are a little reluctant to call for EMS if they need it, for fear of if they're having like a painful issue or some kind of a medical problem where they need like pain relief, and
Oh,
nervous about if they have an addiction issue, are they going to get
yeah.
a narcotic, which
Right.
sets them back. And in Westboro, the fire department has set up a program with the paramedics where we now carry non-narcotic pain control. We carry like IV Tylenol, IV Motrin, by mouth Motrin Tylenol. So
Sure.
those kind of things which are exceptional for pain relief. So
And when you're receiving a call and that you're in that person's home, is that a frontline question somehow that you're asking them? So if they're in pain,
yeah, we ask in a professional capacity, like,
course,
do you have
yeah.
any problems taking narcotics?
Okay.
And then they generally will tell us.
Sure.
And we'll say, okay, we have alternatives to that.
Great.
So would you
Yeah.
be interested in IV Tylenol?
Yeah, right. I mean,
Yeah,
because
that'd be great.
what you don't want to do is someone is on the road to recovery,
Yes.
and I've heard
We're
that
very
that
respectful
happens.
of that. So
yeah.
we have developed
Great.
alternatives through the statewide treatment protocols to take advantage of that program.
Sure. A little bit more of a delicate balance, I think, on the police side, I would imagine, and that is if you're called to help. I mean, you're first responders in many ways, but if there's
So it's actually written into the law, like if someone calls for help because of an overdose,
Yeah.
they're not going to get charged with
Okay.
any type of
okay.
drug possession. That's not the goal. The goal is to save people.
Thank you for
And
sharing.
I would encourage anybody to go to the DEA's website. They have a One Pill Can Kill campaign.
Yes,
There's
I've
a
seen that.
ton of resources on there about education, prevention, things to look for.
Okay.
There's a lot of information.
Excellent. Chiefs, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so pretty sobering topic, but I think what I hope our viewers take away is that we have some amazing resources led by amazing people here in Westboro that genuinely care about the health and welfare, physical and mental of our residents and visitors. So if you have questions, our police and fire departments are accessible, and be well, be safe, and take care of each other. Thanks until the next time.